Welcome back to the Art of Math. Today we're going to go over another algebra applications video. The main point I want to get across today is that algebra and math in general is incredibly useful for modeling the real world. Now in this video we're going to focus specifically on how do you think about exam performance and model that in algebra. Now I don't expect many of you to actually use this to improve on an exam, although thinking about it will be this hopefully will demonstrate how you, like for other problems, what you would do. So why algebra is so useful. So the two main purposes of the video. The main purpose is to show you how to apply algebra to anything, or math to anything, to model the real world. As a secondary kind of benefit or bonus, we can see, and you might get something out of it for like, oh, if I want to do well in an exam, like you might see some tips in this that you should consider, something that you may have kind of been on your radar but you didn't appreciate enough. All right, but remember, the main thing is just to show you how to model this with algebra. All right, so here's going to be our crazy equation. Now I'm not claiming this is the correct equation, I'm just suggesting this is one way to think about things, and just to show you how we can take these abstract things that are all over the place and bring them all together. So let's say S of t. So first of all, before I even get into that, what is this t? So a lot of you from algebra are probably thinking this is the letter S times the letter t, I times t. These are not multiplications. So we're jumping the gun a little bit. So I'm using what's called function notation. And we're going to do functions later on in the series. So just so you know, these are not multiplications. This t is simply an input. So it says, I want to know that, let's say S means your score or your performance. I want to know my score when t is 3 or t is 4. So what does that 3 or 4 mean? So for example, t equals 3 might mean 3 p.m. on January 31st, 2017. If I pick t equals 4, it might be at t equals 4 p.m. So the time is 4 p.m. This is just saying, which score do I want? Do I want the score at 4 p.m., at 3 p.m.? So this is an input and it has nothing to do with multiplication. Just keep that in mind. So this is, you could, if it helps you guys, you can almost ignore the t's, but the t's just tell us at what point in time we're looking at these things. All right, so, and it's read as S of t, OF. So S of t equals I of t plus D of t plus P of t plus R of t plus N of t. So we care about this, your actual performance or score on the exam. Now, the main thing that's going to affect that is, have you been practicing? So I've called this your sort of improvement curve, but that's probably a bad name because we don't want your improvement, we want your actual full performance, not the amount by which you've changed. So really this should be more of a potential, but since we already have a P going on, I didn't want to have two letter P's. So think of this as your potential score. This is like your raw potential. So when you start off, think this is day 1, day 10, day 20. When you start off, you're not going to do well on the exam. As you keep practicing, you're going to start improving. So this is your improvement. But like this is your actual score, but as you've been improving. And now, so your potential gets higher and higher. Eventually it's going to plateau. You're not going to improve infinitely. First of all, there's only like a certain score you can get, and in the beginning you'll have these nice fast beginner gains, and then you'll find it harder and harder to keep improving. So that's why I've modeled it as this curve, and we can even find a math equation to model the exact numbers for this curve, but I won't go into that. So you can come up with an equation to model this curve. So that's your basic curve. So after 20 days of practicing, you're roughly going to get whatever that score is. That could be like a 90, okay? Now, there's other factors. So in the sort of like theoretical sense, after 20 days of practicing, we're going to expect you to perform at whatever this is. Let's say that's a 90%. Now, there's the difficulty of the exam. So over here I have, let's say the average difficulty would be 0. So in other words, if the exam is like a normal exam, it's not going to sway your score either way. It's not going to you're not going to do worse or better. If it's a particularly hard exam, you might do up to 3 points worse. Like you prepared for like a normal exam, and this year the questions were super hard. So if you were getting a 90, subtract 3, so now you're suddenly at an 87. Or maybe the difficulty is super easy, in which case now you're getting a 93. So this can swing plus or minus 3 points, depending on whether it's hard or easy or maybe somewhere in between. Then there's a contribution from your physical state. So let's say it's an average exam, you're performing at your potential, but you are very tired. So if you're tired, you could drop 3 points. Like your eyes are closing, you can't think straight. So if you're well rested, maybe you get an extra point just because you're sort of so amped up, you're not making any careless errors, you're just completely on your game. And if it's sort of an average rested day, you get 0, but don't think of this as a bad thing. This just means it doesn't affect your score up or down, it's neutral. So 0 is neutral. In other words, this is the main thing we're really looking at, and all of these are just gonna bump your score up a little up or a little down. Now, R of T, so the R could be your recovery. So I don't mean necessarily physical recovery, I mean mental recovery. So your average recovery, let's say, would have no effect. Let's say you're super well rested, so you've been doing nothing for a day or two, you come in fresh to an exam, boom, you're gonna do well, so you're gonna get an extra point. But let's say you have like 3 or 4 exams on that day, and by the time you take this exam, you are now mentally very tired. Or you just took a practice exam of this same exam, and so if you have back-to-back exams, that could drop you, let's say, 2 points because you're mentally not performing at your optimal. Then there's something that I'll just call the noise factor. There's just natural variability. Your performance, we'd like to think of it as an exact thing, but it can wobble a little up and a little down. So here I've just created some imaginary wobbly curve. And it can fluctuate, let's say plus or minus 2 points. So if you normally get a 90 and you get an 88, that doesn't mean something happened. That just could be within a normal noise factor. You could have gotten a 92, but if you normally get a 90, suddenly you get like a 96 or an 80 or a 70, then there's probably other factors going on. Now, these are just some of them. We have like a ton of other things. So this is just a simplified example, but there's so much more. So for example, your environment, and you can incorporate that into the letters I had or introduce more letters. Also, I'd like to point out that in the formula, they don't have to be additive. So you can create things with multiplications, divisions. You can make up your own formula. I'm just giving you guys this as a simple way to model it. So let's say your environment, the room you're in. Is the room you're in hot? Is the room you're in cold? Like, are you used to taking it the exam in your own room and suddenly the room is so hot that it's just making you uncomfortable? Or is it so freezing that it's completely distracting you? There could be distractions in the room. So for example, let's say you're a great student, you're a model student, and somebody's sitting behind you. Like, let's say I'm a jerk sitting behind you and I'm going if I'm clicking my pen, or kicking your chair, might distract you. Friends, so are your friends in the room? If so, that could, distract you, but at the same time, maybe that makes you feel good and comfortable, and now you feel like you're in a good environment. Maybe, if there's only strangers, you feel a little more nervous, so that could have an effect in either direction. How about the legroom? Maybe you're used to a nice, luxurious environment, but suddenly you're at, your legroom is really bad, you're really cramped. Desk size, maybe you're used to having a whole table to write on, but suddenly you have a little, I'm sure this is familiar to many of you, you have a little tiny desk where you have one paper and everything else starts to fall off. That can be really disruptive. That can mess up your time, everything. The amount of scrap paper, so maybe you're used to writing, this is, for math, for English, for anything, you're used to having a ton of scrap paper and suddenly you can't write anything anywhere except for the exam booklet. So there's just so many factors. Breakfast. Did you skip breakfast? Do you normally eat breakfast? Did you eat good food? Did you eat bad food? Did you suddenly decide to eat some food you've never eaten before? Do you have an upset stomach? These sound silly, but these can radically affect your score. So, did you use the bathroom before the exam? If not, A, it may make you feel worse. It can distract you. It can make you lose time because maybe you're thinking about it or you have to actually excuse yourself and go to the bathroom. Is something else that's major troubling you? So maybe some other major life event happened. You're thinking about something else. Your mind is elsewhere, and so you're not performing optimally. So again, these are things you could try to incorporate and more into this equation. So basically, depending on, if I were to ask someone, have you been practicing a while? They're like, yeah, I usually get, whatever, 90, 94. Let's say 90 for our original example. If I'm at like 90%, and then, I ask them, how are all these other things? How difficult was the exam? Were you physically rested? Were you mentally rested? And how about the environment? How about based on that, you can have a pretty good prediction. Like, did you do well? And I think a lot of you guys already intuitively know about all this, but I just want to show you how you incorporate that into sort of one equation using algebra. All right, I'll leave it at that. If you want to see me model something else, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do something either serious or just something comical, whatever you guys want. If there's something that catches my attention, I'd be happy to do it. All right, see you guys in the next video.